This just confirms what we all feared. The writing seems to be on the wall for Guerschon Yabusele being capable of coming back to this Philadelphia 76ers team. After Daryl Morey absolutely nailed bringing over Yabusele on a veteran's minimum from overseas last offseason, and a player who ingratiated himself into the city at a more rapid rate than we typically see, it does seem like it is going to be a one and done opportunity. We do have a couple articles breaking down the financials that I do want to dive into. This has been a topic that I've kind of danced around for several months to this point. Did want to wait until the chips fully fell and we saw the state of the draft pick. And as we know, and as I've mentioned on here before, there is a specific salary cap hit and dollar figure assigned to each specific draft slot. And getting the third pick did not help the outlook for Yabusele. So we're going to touch on it all in this video here. But before I dive fully into it, do want to remind you guys as always to make sure you are hitting that subscribe button. At this point in time, only 31.1% of you guys watching these videos have subscribed to us here at Sixers Digest just yet. So make sure you're hitting that button. Helps us out a ton, and there are better days ahead for this Sixers team. Now, to get into the topic of today, I first want to start off with this article from 97.3 ESPN based out of Philadelphia here, and it's written out that Morey has made it clear that the team would like to retain Yabusele. Quote, "We really like his fit going forward, so we would like to retain him," Morey said of Yabusele after the season. "Obviously, he's an unrestricted free agent, so it's not for sure whenever that happens, but we would like to retain him. The problem for Philly is their lack of salary cap space. With the vast majority of the cap space tied up in the trio of Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George, they have little room to spend elsewhere, especially if they plan to bring back Quentin Grimes, which seems to be the priority. Prior to the addition of Grimes at the trade deadline, retaining Yabu might have been considered a top offseason priority, but Grimes is a better fit for Philly. He's nearly 4 years younger and projects as an ideal complement alongside Maxey and Jared McCain moving forward. If the Sixers could keep both Grimes and Yabusele, they likely would, but that is unlikely. The team could technically use the full $14.1 million non-taxpayer mid-level exception to retain Yabusele, but by doing so, they would severely limit their ability to improve otherwise and might prevent them from being able to re-sign Grimes, as they would be hard capped at the first apron. Now, to jump in a little bit here, I do see it talked about kind of often that it's this decision, Yabusele or Grimes. That really is not the case there, and the simplest way to break this down is Quentin Grimes is a restricted free agent. What that means exactly is you can match any offer that other teams submit. Whatever offer sheet is signed, and we will see if there will even be interest, what that level of interest is. We've seen certain cases with Paul Reed being a clear example in recent memory of a team sort of signing a specific offer sheet, just trying to force this player to leave this team. And with that specific Jazz offer sheet, shout out to Danny Age for this little intricacy and trick here. They had the stipulations as far as making it past the second round, which were very directed at the Sixers here. Obviously, the Utah Jazz were a bottom-feeding team and still remain a bottom-feeding team, although the Sixers can't throw stones this season, but you were basically calling this. I don't think we're going to see that type of situation play out with Quentin Grimes. And by the way, cost Paul Reed quite a bit of money in the end, as the Sixers failed to reach that playoff stipulation after matching the contract in the end. But nonetheless, to keep this train on the tracks for Quentin Grimes specifically, that the Sixers have the freedom to basically match whatever offer is sent his way and can go above the salary cap to do so. There are other stipulations that come with this, but that is not the case with Guerschon Yabusele. They do not have his bird rights. He is not a restricted free agent. He has the freedom to straight up sign on the dotted lines with whatever team that he chooses to. Do I believe that he would like to come back to Philadelphia with all things equal? I do think that is true, but I also think at the end of the day, this is a job. And for a guy like Guerschon Yabusele, he needs to make as much money as he can in the short term. Let's not forget this guy's backstory, that he is scrapped to get back to the NBA to this point. After being a first-round pick by the Boston Celtics, having to earn his pathway back overseas for several seasons, and obviously maximizing it in the lone year that he did get, this is his time to strike while the iron's hot. Now, to continue on with this article from 97.3 ESPN, it writes out, the more realistic scenario that they could use the $5.7 million taxpayer mid-level exception to retain Yabu, but that might require him to take less money than he could get elsewhere. For a guy who has never cashed in on any major NBA contracts, that might be a lot to ask. While Yabusele has enjoyed his time in Philly and would be open to returning, he's understandably eager to ride the wave of free agency and see where it takes him. Quote, "It's going to be my first time really enjoying free agency, especially in the NBA. I'm pretty excited to hear the offers, to see what's going on, to see the moment," Yabusele said in a recent interview with HoopsHype. "And if it's the 76ers, I'll be more than happy. If I have to go back there, I'd be more than happy. And then if you've got to be somewhere else, I'd be happy too. I just want to be on a team where we compete and have the same goals." So This wasn't exactly a quote that inspired my confidence that he could be back, but I do think it is just a fair assessment of the situation overall. There's a couple other factors that I did want to dive into to touch on the kind of the salary cap implications. Nobody does it better than Keith Smith, maybe my guy Yossi Goslin as well. But this article states, according to Keith Smith and Trevor Lane, speak on the NBA front office show, Yabusele is a logical candidate to sign a deal for the full taxpayer MLE. That exception is expected to sit around 5.67 million next season. Of course, there's no guarantee that the Sixers will be a team to extend that offer to the impressive forward. Quote, 5.685 million or 5.67 million, or the taxpayer mid-level exception, Smith said. That's about where I see him as well. I think he's going to get a bump over his minimum contract the way that he played for this year. Between the work he did overseas, the Olympics, and then the way that translated into him having a very strong NBA season, it's no longer a prove-it type situation for him. 5-6 billion bucks, sure, yeah, that makes sense, especially if you're a team where it does. We don't have a lot of holes to fill. We really need somebody who's a true 4 but can play a little bit of small ball 5. And this is another point that I did want to bring up in regard to Yabusele, is he is a unique combination of skills. For a guy that is very physical, very strong, still has some nice athleticism and has some rim rocking dunks there, I think he's best suited as a true 4-man, and I would like him to find a situation where that is the case. I think we would have seen that in the much fuller effect here in Philadelphia if obviously Joel Embiid was a bit more healthy. But I think he was the power forward that they've been missing for several years. And what's really frustrating about this entire situation is I don't think the Sixers have done the greatest job dating back years, and Daryl Morey has certainly done a much better job of this since he's taken control. But I don't think the organization has done an excellent job of hitting on the margins, of getting these veterans minimums that outpay what that dollar figure is in production there. Yabusele is absolutely a dude that fits that criteria, and a guy that I think if we could have gone to battle with from a postseason perspective, he would have completely shined there. It is unfortunate that never became the case, and it is kind of unfortunate that this is the situation that they are currently staring down the barrel of. Now, the last point that I did want to hit on here is once again the dollar sign per draft pick here. And you can see, obviously, the 1 pick is set to make more money than the 2 pick, the 2 pick than the 3 pick, and so on and so on. The only way that this conversation sort of ties together to me is there are the whispers and continued reports of the Sixers looking to trade around in the draft pick. Now, trade around in the draft order. Now, the most recent reports talk about them leaping up to the 2nd pick. Obviously, would not make much of a difference in this situation, and in fact, put them in a more difficult spot. If there is a potential trade down situation, which we've heard some rumors of the Pelicans pick or Nets pick or something like that, you can start to get a little bit more wiggle room, but it's still not as clear cut of a path there. Pretty much any way you slice it, it's going to be really hard to retain Yabusele, and you're going to have to go to some triggers and sacrifice some things that you probably don't want to. For even the biggest Yabusele fan out there, we have to acknowledge he is still essentially a role player type guy. He's a glue player type guy. I think the ultimate conclusion here is the hoops that you would have to jump through to make a legitimate offer to retain him and keep him in Philadelphia is probably not worth the punishment or restrictions that you put on yourself moving forward. That is a tough pill to swallow, and one that I wish we did not have to here in Philadelphia, but those are the brutal rules of the CBA, and frankly, we're going to see much more significant fallout than just the Sixers losing Yabusele. Take a peek at what's going to happen with the Boston Celtics, what is currently happening with the Phoenix Suns. There's going to be a ton of examples of this, of financially motivated moves around the NBA. It isn't great. I don't think it's great for the state of the league, but nonetheless, this is the reality we live in and the rules that every team needs to play by. The Sixers are seeing this on a bit of a smaller scale, and will be interesting to see what we see moving forward. But to Guerschon Yabusele, who knows? Maybe the market dries up. There isn't going to be this crazy money running around anywhere, but I do think it would be pretty shocking if there's not one team out there that doesn't spare that non-mix or the MLE there to give him a legitimate offer. That is probably how things shape up, and it is not in Philadelphia, but would certainly love to be wrong on this. He's definitely a guy worth more than a minimum at this point in the game, and it also wouldn't shock me if there's a team that really believes in him as a talent, that does say this can be the type of glue guy for the future. If we can get him on a multi-year deal and kind of keep him alongside maybe a younger roster and grow with them type of conversation, I could see it happening there. It is going to be frustrating. He will be a guy that I'll be rooting for regardless of what jersey he's in, as long as it is not the Knicks or the Celtics there, but we will see how things shake out. So to Guerschon Yabusele, no hard feelings if this is the end of the road. Maybe Daryl Morey can pull a miracle, some sort of wild trade or sign and trade situation that is, not by the books or something that we can see a clear path to. We've seen stranger things happen, but it does feel the writing is on the wall at this current point in time. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is this a bigger deal than I'm kind of leading it on to be? I am certainly disappointed by Yabusele not returning, if that is ultimately going to be the case there. But I do think this is something that the Sixers have to keep their main priorities, the main priorities. That we understand that a guy like Quentin Grimes, who is 24, who showed out in the second half of the season, is more important to prioritize. Jared McCain will be coming back. Getting the proper pick with this third pick is far more important than it is to keep Yabusele around moving forward. And those are all kind of the realities that we do got to check ourselves from. I think we all were a little bit too high on the supply of Guerschon Yabusele the mid part of the season and did see him come back to reality a bit as the year transpired, but he was in a pretty brutal situation just based on the state of the season overall, so no hate toward him either. Once again, let me know what you guys think in the comments. And one more time, do want to remind you guys to make sure you are subscribing. Once again, 68.9% of you guys watching have not subscribed to the channel just yet. Let's keep this Sixers Digest family growing. The countdown to the NBA draft continues, and we'll be all over things from start to finish. So make sure you're hitting that button, dropping a like on this video here. I'll be right back. Talk with you next time. Peace.